Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your host, Jake. Scott cannot join us today, but we're excited to talk about a brand that you might not have heard of, but you should be paying attention to because it's got a weird piece of wonky things in there that makes it a Kentucky bourbon finished in Scotland. So sit back and buckle into the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. We are excited to welcome Brian Luftman here to the podcast of Never Say Die Bourbon and Rye Whiskey. Excited, Brian, to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Really excited. This brand, and we'll lead for you to tell most of the story, came out a few years back, and it was very intriguing to say the least, right? This idea of bourbon and rye whiskey finished here in America, or made here in America, but finished and aged in another country. So explain to me a little bit about how you created this brand, because it is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually, it finished in England, not Scotland. There's not a whole lot of whiskey in England. So yeah, no, it's all right. There's not many people that think of whiskey when they think of England anyway. So it's a fair mistake, but it's all based on a horse that grew up or that was born here in Lexington, Kentucky, and ended up changing racing and rock and roll history over in England. So when my partner told me the story of Never Say Die and this horse, how it changed rock and roll history, it was so cool that we were like, we had to have some English component. It really just changed the world over in England. So we figured, how do we create this brand that will get people in England excited about bourbon? And so our choices were to build a distillery over in England or maybe ship whiskey over to England and bottle it there. And we chose the second option there.
It definitely probably a more efficient option. And considering all the stuff going on with distilleries right about now, probably looks like you made the right decision.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I think so.
What's that process look like to be able to send a barrel or a tanker of whiskey over there to have it bottled and then shipped back? Like, what's that look like? Because going across the Atlantic is no small feat.
Right. Yeah. So it was the obvious choice because we wanted to make the whiskey in Kentucky. We're here in central Kentucky, where it's the heart of bourbon country. And we knew some really brilliant distillers down in Danville that used a sweet mash process that we really wanted to utilize. And they actually loved the story and the concept of what we were building with Never Say Die, that they asked us to be partners with us. So the two founders of the distillery where we make our stuff, I can't really disclose, but it's in Danville. And they are partners of ours. And then we aged it there for 6 years because it ages more efficiently in America than it would in England because of the perfect temperature fluctuations and everything that's going on in Kentucky that makes whiskey perfect here, in my opinion anyway. And then we ship the barrels. So we load them up into a shipping container and we load them over and they're literally, we don't dump them into a tanker or anything, even though that would be more efficient. We want it to really slosh around in the barrel the whole way over to the ocean. Just the motion of the ocean makes the whiskey better, right? And then it ages for a year in England, which actually slows down the maturation process, but it also smooths out the whiskey a lot. And we weren't sure what it was going to do to the whiskey, but it actually has generated incredible stuff. I mean, we like it better after we taste it once it's spent a year in England and did the ocean trip than before the barrel, no question.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, right? Whether you think about Jefferson's Oceans, who takes a voyage on a different area, or Jefferson's also did the tropics version. I also think about Gosling's. They have a rum that they actually ship back and forth across Bermuda up to New Jersey and back, right? And so there's been a lot of different oceanic expressions, right? And you think about it, there's a portion of the barrel that doesn't get touched. So that interaction, you're getting fresh wood sugars and vanillins and stuff as you move it. So there is extra extraction, hot, humid day on the boat, what type of expansion and contraction you're getting in a metal tanker, that's transporting this information, or these barrels, or, if it's in those barrel carts that go on a shipping container, right? That's got heat in it. So do you all do anything specific? Are there any holes in it? Is there anything else that allows it to expose the elements, or is it set in one of those, lack of better terms, like a railroad car?
Yeah, like shipping container. No, we don't do anything crazy to it, which is a shame. Like, I wish we could just have them, like, how beautiful it'd be if it was just out on top of a deck of a sailboat. You know what I mean? Shipping across the ocean like the Santa Maria or something, but it's in a shipping container, and sadly, that's kind of the only way we can do it efficiently, and it's still not even efficient in that way. But you brought up a good point I never even thought about, the fact that when you bottle a barrel, and most of it is full, but it evaporates over time, the top of the barrel never gets any exposure to the whiskey. And so it's kind of wasted sugars and all of the different flavors that could come from that. And we definitely capture that. I never even thought about that, Jake. That's great.
Well, you think about it, it's most people don't rotate barrels, outside of a few distilleries, legacy things, and so you're pulling barrels that are 6 years old, right? They've lived in a home at that distillery place for a while, and so you're creating movement just by getting the barrel out and then going and moving to another place, and you know. I think it's very interesting because you basically slow the aging process down when it gets to England. It makes it almost non-existent. You kind of wonder, and I'm like looking, I have scotch sitting on my bar, but like, scotch at 12 years old is almost, I mean, I'm pulling the rye, but I mean, it's the same color at 7, right? It's kind of crazy how that looks, that it takes so much more aging, right? 5 more years to get about the same color, the same extract, where you've already gotten a lot of that extract in the first 6. Now you're slowing it down and rounding it out. I think that's what this has done, is it's rounded out the whiskey quite a bit. And that's what I like, considering where I know enough about bourbon to know what happens in Danville, Kentucky. And I may have tried things from that distillery. That's the thing that I have found an issue. It's not rounded enough. This is very round and approachable when it comes to it.
Love it. Thanks. And I mean, if people don't like, people love our brand because they fall in love with the story of it and the spirit of Never Say Die. But if you didn't know anything else and you just had a sample, which is the way that San Francisco's judges do it, we've submitted our bourbon and our rye every year to San Francisco for the last 2 years since we launched. And in a blind taste test with all these celebrity judges, ours wins double gold every year. And so that proved to me that this ocean trip and the year in England absolutely takes it to another level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely has given it something that is flavor profile that you just can't put your finger on. A lot of people think about these transportations as gimmicks. I don't. I mean, I've tried non voyage options of Jefferson's, and it's just different. I do think that experiential part of the barrel does make changes, and I think it shows very well here in your all's expression. So, keep doing what you're doing, right? Because that's your story. And when it comes to where you are, bourbon and horse racing, it doesn't miss, right? Like, you're getting a lot of that. So can you share, what is that full story for those people who haven't heard about Never Say Die, and how taking this unique Kentucky thing, and how that pairs with horse racing and leads to the.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important that everybody understands the story of Never Say Die and why the heck. And once you hear it, you understand why we would take the extra step to ship whiskey in the barrel over to England and deal with all of the tariffs and you have no idea what a pain it is to do all of those logistical. It's a nightmare to get something in bond transferred over to England and then store it further and then label it for sale and bring it back to America. What a pain. I mean, but we do it with every single 100% of our barrels and bottles. So it's always done that way because the story is so cool. So this horse was born in Lexington, Kentucky. This is 70 something years ago in 1951. And they had spent a lot of money to produce a turf racehorse and used bloodstock. So the father or the sire was from England, to my knowledge, to create a turf racing horse on the grass. So Kentucky's famous for dirt horse racing, like the Kentucky Derby. But they wanted to produce a turf champion. And so they have this foal in the middle of the night that they've spent a lot of time to try to breed, and it almost dies. It has a terrible birth. It's barely breathing, faint heartbeat. They think they're going to lose this foal. And the main horse guy, John A. Bell III, his famous guy, walked into the barn that night and takes a shot of whiskey and dumps it down like a bottle of bourbon and dumps it down this baby foal's mouth right there at birth, and it works. Like, it shocks the horse's system. It gets its heart rate jumping. It jumps up, walks around the way a horse is supposed to, and then it goes to bed. And so they're like, let's see if he lives through the night, but we're going to name him Never Say Die. And sure enough, he lived through the night, and the name lives on forever, right? So, but the cool part, there's 2 more parts of the story that are literally unbelievable besides that. So that horse ends up 3 years later being a very good horse racer, but he is good on the turf. So naturally, they sent him over to England. That's where all the big turf races are, and that's where the big circuit was. And so he's doing pretty well over there and winning races, and they just decided to take a bold shot, and they put him into the Epsom Derby, which, are you familiar with that race, Jake? No, see, neither was I until Pat told me the story. 50s. This was 1954 when Never Say Die's a 3-year-old. He was. This was the biggest race in the world. It was bigger than the Kentucky Derby. This was the 175th running. Queen Elizabeth was. This was in the second was in her 20s, and this was the first Derby that she ever attended in person. And Winston Churchill, of all people, took her to the race and was in the box with her that day. And she had the two favorites. So everyone thinks that the Queen's going to win, of course. And there's a bunch of other horses in the race amongst 250,000 other people, which is unbelievable. It's a huge festival. And nobody thinks Never Say Die has a chance. He's 33 to 1 underdog. They can't even find a jockey to ride him. They flip a coin between these two rookie kids, and Lester Piggott wins the coin flip. And they put him in jockey silks that look like what I'm wearing today. For any of your viewers who are watching this online, you can see what the colors of what Never Said I wore that day, how Lester Piggott did. And he shocks the world, wins at 33 to 1 odds, becomes the first American-born champion of the English Classic since 1881, breaks a huge drought, and really sets up Lexington, Kentucky on a path to becoming the horse racing capital of the world, undisputed. And it was not the case 70-something years ago. And the Queen came to Kentucky quite a few times, to Louisville, where you are. And so it put Kentucky on the map, frankly. I'm not saying it's all Never Say Die, but that had a lot to do with it.
Well, I mean, I remember the last time the Queen was here. I mean, it was a big to-do. One of the largest crowds ever was the year that she was here. And the Derby, I think, over the last 50 years has become the event in horse racing, right? It is all about the pomp and circumstance. It is all about the spirit of the long shot. We've had a lot of long shots win recently. And it's about, the true Kentucky spirit. The one thing as a Louisvillian, it's less Louisville than it ever has been. It's more national, which you got to have it, one or the other ways. Like as a kid, I could go to Derby and it was no big deal. You go to the infield, you go to Oaks, you could get in. Now it's like impossible to do those things or cost an arm and a leg, which, all growth has its way to eliminate some of the traditional stuff. But for one day out of the year, the world really, from a sporting event perspective, stops and looks at Louisville, Kentucky around 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and watches the fastest 2 minutes in sports. And there's no better feeling of place than the Kentucky Derby. And I think that's what racing gives. And I think that's what Bourbon gives. It's a sense of place. We're going to talk to Eric Gregory tomorrow of the Kentucky Distillers Association. And I think that's what Kentucky's done, is taken brands, whether non-producing distillers or producing distillers or heritage brands, and they've made Kentucky feel like home for millions and millions of people around the world. Yeah.
That's a great segue. I don't think you meant to do it, but I'm going to finish the story based on what you just said. Because you just painted the picture of how the whole world was watching this one race and on that one day. And that was what the Epsom Derby was, the English Classic in England back in the 50s. And so this woman in Liverpool sees the name Never Say Die, and she's like, that is my family motto. I'm adopting that. And frankly, I'm making a huge bet on this horse. How could it lose? It's 33 to 1 odds. Its life was saved by Bourbon. And her name is Mona Best. So this is right before the race. And like, as you painted the picture, the whole world's watching, and she goes up into her attic and she grabs her jewelry, her family jewels, and goes and pawns it at a pawn shop and takes every dollar and puts it, or every pound, and puts it on Never Say Die to win, which is an insane bet, right? And she wins. So her dream with the winnings and what she'd been trying to do was take a shot to help her son, who's a drummer, and his name's Pete Best. This is back when he's a teenager, and his best friends are Paul McCartney, John Lennon, and George Harrison. And she had bought them a venue downtown Liverpool with her winnings from that race, and told the boys to paint the walls so they could be the first act of the Casbah Coffee Club, which she founded with her winnings. And the Quarrymen was the name of their band. They weren't even called the Beatles yet. They played there for several months, and then they went off to Hamburg, Germany, and became famous. And then they ended up kicking Pete out of the band, which is tragic, and putting Ringo Starr in, and the rest is history. But if it weren't for some horse being born here in Lexington, Kentucky, and its life being saved by Bourbon, and this bold woman making an insane bet, and all of the factors that happened, maybe the Beatles never even get their chance, And that's an absolute insane story that Pat told me. And that's when we've taken all these steps I dropped a lot of what I was working on and other type of deals, and to really focus on building this brand the right way so that we could help people tell that story and get emboldened themselves when they drink a bottle of Never Say Die, they get to share the story with their friends and this triumphant, crazy bet, and see if they can take the world by the horns the way that Mona Best did.
Thing quite like Beatlemania. And looking back on that from a historic perspective, and like going to London and seeing like all the iconic places and all of that, you can see the lasting impact the Beatles had on the country and the city.
Yeah. Pretty wild.
So, for you all, right, you've created a conversation piece in London, which, having been there several years ago, but still having been there, they actually have a pretty decent bourbon culture. You can go there, you can find a lot of the more top shelf bourbons there at decent price per pound. I was at a bar and we were drinking Weller 12 for $8 a pound, which is a steal. I couldn't find that here in Kentucky to save my life. So what do you think of that, the bourbon culture in London? How have they adopted that, as you all have kind of told this story? What's that like from an adoption perspective? Because I know some of it lands here, but a lot of it stays in London and is consumed there as well.
Yeah, the reason you can find Weller 12 for £8 a pour or whatever it is because it's not an efficient market over there. There's just not that many people who are paying attention to bourbon, but there is a culture there, and there are people that love bourbon, and the fans of tons of them are Never Say Die fans. So it's great. But what we actually thought our brand might just be England only and we launched it there for the first 6 months as this is England's bourbon. You know what I mean? Actually, you brought up Eric Gregory. We were in Eric Gregory's office, and after Never Say Die, our brand was called the world's best bourbon by Forbes magazine, which really put us on the map. And he asked us for a meeting, and we're like, sure. And me and Pat Madden go and meet with Eric, and he's like, hey, you guys are calling it England's bourbon. Is there any way you guys could not call it England's bourbon? Like, this is an American product, and this needs to be an American product. You can call it England's favorite bourbon. And he wasn't like threatening or anything like that, but he was just like asking politely, like, hey, this is a Kentucky bourbon. Let's celebrate that. And we do. And so there's a community of English people over there that love bourbon, but per capita, like, America kills England as far as like bourbon lovers. Just the culture that you can walk into a restaurant and there's going to have an old fashioned on the menu here. That doesn't exist in England. Right. They'll come around. It is. Yes. Same process. The only difference is that it's aged 1 year less. Most people know that rye matures more quickly than bourbon does.
Yeah. And coming back to the bourbon as we talk here, I mean, it's been a while since I've sipped it, and that was killer. And you were asking a question around like prior to in our show meetings. So 95 proof, small batch bourbon. One, I think I'm going to steal your thunder, but I think small batch bourbon is a great way to make bourbon. One, because everywhere else in the world we celebrate batching. We don't celebrate that here in America, and I don't know why. We call blending something bad because we think about blended whiskeys, right? But small batching and taking a few barrels and creating a flavor profile, I think is the ultimate form of creating whiskey, right? Because you took an idea and you were able to batch it. There may be some variance because every barrel's different. Every batch is going to be slightly different because you can't replicate the same exact wood sugars because the barrel's going to be different, right? Or the distillate may be slightly different. Could have aged somewhere else, right? But I think batching is the most underrated thing that we do in bourbon. I think small batch is a perfect way to go because you're trying to create very limited nuance from a flavor profile perspective. So if they've saw batch 1, they're going to experience batch 20. Should be similar, but there's going to be some, differences. And so I think batching is a way to get a consistent fan base, right? That's why people lean towards Elijah Craig or something because they're used to these barrel batches that are similar. I can pick that 94 proof up and I can go and enjoy it. Now, single barrels have been everything. I've sold single barrels. Single barrels are tough. It's a saturated market, typically overpriced and hard to move as much as I want them to move fast. And I think that we create, great expressions when we pick single barrels. I think batching is one, an attention to the brand. Got to give them their flowers, and two, it creates a consistency for the consumer, which I think people really want. If I pick this up, I want to be able to know that I can enjoy it neat, on a rock, or in a cocktail. Can't always do that in a single barrel because I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it better on a rock, better neat, better in a cocktail. But this, if I know I like the base flavor profile, I know I can enjoy it all three ways. And as a bourbon brand or a whiskey brand, I think that's what you're looking for. Is how can I make this a staple for everything and every way someone drinks?
Thanks. Yeah, I asked, so for your listeners, what question I asked Jake, is small batch dead? Because everyone seems to be like, what we're doing by producing 2 small batch products and nothing else is totally different than what the rest of the market's doing right now. I mean, almost every brand is coming out with all these different expressions, barrel aged, double oaked, different staves, all kinds of stuff, multiple blends of different whiskeys and port finishes, etc. And it seems to be, and barrel picks, and it seems like that's what the consumer wants, and that's why all of these producers are doing it. But I don't understand how it's sustainable. And I kind of love it because it's elevated what people expect out of whiskey and the level that they want out of it. But I don't understand how it's sustainable, because if you think about it, if every single producer or distillery is selling their best 10% of their barrels when people come pick them out, then what happens with the other 90%? And so I don't know. We came up with a business plan that we think is sustainable, which is we're going to have 95 to 98% of our barrels go into our blends. And then we just pick like 2 or 3 barrels out of each lot. So every time a shipping container goes over to England, we grab 2, 3, 4, usually anywhere 2 to 5 barrels out of that lot and save those for single barrel that's available only in England. But we'll keep that same ratio forever because we don't want our small batch to not be awesome. We want that to be exquisite as well. And that's kind of what we planned for with this brand, was let's make a world-class small batch, even though nobody seems to be looking for world-class small batch right now.
We look at like the growth of social media and the influence, and whether I pick someone like Bourbon Finds, I think, who has the biggest following of bourbon people, over nearly 300,000, or Louisville Bourbon Buzz, Tyler's good friend, he's got 200,000 followers, or someone growing like Wayne, who also does tequila, or Bourbon and Smoke Jason, who does 60,000 followers. They're great voices, but a lot of times what you hear them talk about, because what generates interest is brand new releases, which is great, or some one-off things that are super high proof. And so they get the bourbon enthusiast really going in that one direction. But that's probably like 2% of the market, 3% of the market. The majority of the people are going in, they know what they want, they grab the boom, and they're off to the races, right? For lack of better terms, for what they want to do with that bottle. And so, because here in America, we like poo-poo on 80 proof bourbon, 80 proof whiskey. But the majority of the world drinks 80 proof, right? Like, so I think we have some really good voices, and I think they create great content. That was not a poo-poo on them at all. I really respect all of them. And they raise the voice of the bourbon enthusiast that I think sometimes lost in the void, where like the majority of the consumer drinks whiskey 80 to 100 proof. That's what they want. They want something consistent. They want something there. And I think because what we see on social media, perception becomes reality. We want that 150 proof hazmat American whiskey, or 140 proof, bourbon, whatever. That becomes perception. So we're always trying to chase that. But in all honesty, I believe that if I were to take 10 random people off the street, men or women, and bring them into a room, I think I would curate the perfect tasting with most whiskeys under 115 proof, that they would find enjoyable and delectable. I can find something spicy that could give them that sense of proof. I could find them something low proof that they would give, think that it has age and balance and darkness and richness, right? So you would balance that out. But I think we're shouting into a loud void that people want all of these exotic things, and I'm not 100% sure that they do.
Can I make a prediction on that? Like, I mean, are you a beer drinker, Jake? So, like, I don't know. As you were talking, I was sort of seeing like a similarity between the beer market and what happened with it, where for years it was like it was 3%, 4% alcohol beer, and that was what all anybody drank was Coors, Miller, Pabst, Budweiser, and then all of a sudden, like Sam Adams comes along, and then Sierra Nevada, and they start to elevate things, and it's a little higher alcohol content and more flavor. And then it just goes insane. And then next thing you know, there's like 9 and 10 and 15% Imperial IPAs. And then and that was the rage for a little while. But now it seems to have settled in where I mean, my favorite IPA, and I love a good 8-9% IPA, but I can have one of them, you know what I mean? But I love a 15 pack of Founders All Day IPA, which is like 4.5%, and it still has the flavor that I'm looking for. And I still love a good Miller Lite, you know what I mean? And I'll drink like 4 of those on the boat and have a great day. But my point is, like, it starts to settle back into where, like you said, like the proof has been 80 over in England and in the UK for years. And bourbon, frankly, like the most popular bourbons in the world were between 80 and 90. And Eagle Rare at 90 was like ridiculous, right? That was like high. I feel like this is all going to settle back in, and there's always going to be a place for those hazmats because there's going to be the people that really like that stuff. But like as far as volume and what people are seeking out, it's got to settle in that 90 to 115. And I think 115 is high. I think it's more like 90 to 110 is what's going to be the daily offerings that people are going to be looking for.
I 100% agree, and I think we've seen a course correction in like the amount of spirits consumed. We're not as bored. We've got more things to do. Prices have increased, so I'm going to go with what I want to drink. I may buy one versus 3 different bottles, right? My spending may have changed. My habits may change there. But overall, I think this is, we're entering into a bourbon, area that we are going to see the great golden age for the consumer. There's going to be so much whiskey come online that is of age and rich in complexity, and you don't have to hide behind anything. It's a 19-year-old bourbon. It's a 10-year-old bourbon. It's a 7-year-old with this cool story, right? Whatever it is, you don't have to hide behind, it's finished in, Pinot de Charente and, had lemongrass in it, whatever. Like, you're not going to have to hide behind some gimmick. You're going to like realize that, there's been great whiskey produced at many heritage distilleries over the last 20 years. And this is your time to enjoy that because it's going to hit market like it's never hit before, where during COVID, you couldn't find the whiskey. Now you'll be able to find it and hopefully enjoy it and not sell it because you'll miss out on a great opportunity to create a story. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to lift a glass and we're trying to share conversations with people to figure out how we make sure bourbon and whiskey in general, goes to the next generation. So our kids and their kids have the opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. I love that. Yeah, it is a buyer's market for sure. Like this is the consumers are winning right now, no doubt about it. And I think that'll continue for a while. I mean, producers, we have to up our game. Like we have to make it spectacular or else people aren't going to buy it.
I mean, I think that's the most important thing is find ways to, just like everything, you got to increase the quality while sustaining a price. You can't increase quality and then drop or like hammer them down on like 20-30% increases. Now, you're in a very interesting area where God help us with all the tariffs, but like you're dealing with, some different things that most people aren't dealing with. So, I think people should be patient with you all as you all figure all those things out. But I think we can experience great conversations and great whiskey if we're just patient enough and willing to lock in onto the things that matter. Like, is it good or am I chasing a fad? I think if we chase good and members chase good from a drinking perspective, they'll end up with the right whiskey in their hand versus just chasing the fad, which I think the fad.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's searching for Blantons all over the place. You know what I mean? Like, I challenge or actually like invite anybody that's listening to grab a bottle of Blantons if you can find one, and a bottle of Never Say Die and do a blind taste test. You will be shocked at the results. And I put our rye up against any rye in the world, and we'll beat it. Or it'll be close. And if I'm wrong, then send me a message on Instagram. I'm on Instagram myself, and I'd love to hear from you. Or through our website.
Good whiskey. I just tried both of these again. I think if you're a rye drinker, this rye is a can't miss. It's bold, it's spicy, it's rounded caramel, vanilla, balanced with like sandalwood and like deep, rich fig notes. It's just got it all going on. The bourbon's, well-rounded, easy approachable at 95 proof. 95. Right. I got that right. 105 proof on the rye, so it does have a little more punchy, but like that in an old fashioned, killer. Done that a couple times. So if you're looking for a brand that's trying to stay consistent, I think you all are are a great viewpoint of that, especially in the day and age where every small brand is trying to like innovate to the hilt. I think keeping your all's eyes on the prize, I think, is very beneficial.
Thanks. That's our lane. We're gonna have these 2 bottles. That's it. The barrel proof's over in England, and that's sort of like Blanton's Gold. If anyone goes over to England, they want to go pick up a bottle of our barrel strength. That's off the charts good. But in America, you're going to find those 2 bottles, and that's going to be the way it's going to be for many, many years. And we just kind of hope that this is something somebody could go find and give it as a gift that doesn't cost over $80. It's like 60 something dollars in most states. We're in 12 states. And we just want it to be a prize that people can go search out and give away as a gift or tell the story, because they get to tell the story that I just told you. And even if they tell a little bit of it, they're like, you wouldn't believe the Beatles started because of some bet this woman made, you know? So we're just staying in our lane with those 2 products.
And the other thing is we can't miss on the opportunity is you all are about to get a lot of publicity, and you all are going to be airing a commercial and sponsoring a race. Can you tell a little bit people about what's going to happen at the end of August?
Yeah. So because we love horse racing, and how music and horse racing are the 2 key components of our brand besides just whiskey in general. And there's a huge horse race coming up in Kentucky, but it's called the Nashville Derby down in southern Kentucky. It's it's closer to Nashville than it is to Lexington, but it's at a racetrack called Kentucky Downs. And on Labor Day weekend on August 30th, we're the lead bourbon sponsor for the day, but also NBC heard about the fact that we were the lead sponsor of the day, and they made the Never Say Die Stakes. It's a $2 million race that's going to be on national television. And we're also going to have, I think they're going to do a feature on us, because NBC just fell in love with the story of Never Say Die. So I think they may interview me or Pat, my co-founder, or maybe run a little piece on it. And then the actual Never Say Die Stakes will be a $2 million race that goes on that day. And anyone that wants to tune in on August 30th, you can watch it on NBC nationwide.
It's a good chance for me to be a degenerate and bet on some horses that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, really appreciate you coming on here and talking a little bit about what you all have created. Been a fan of the brand since it came out. Love the story on how you're creating this conversation with bourbon worldwide. And I think that's the thing is, here in Kentucky, we know we're a small, mighty commonwealth. We want people worldwide to know what we're producing. And so, thanks for being a flag bearer in England for us. It's a big deal. I don't think a lot of people probably give you credit for that, but appreciate what you're doing and excited to see what the future holds. So really appreciate you joining, Brian.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, I appreciate it too. And thanks for exposing us to all of your loyal fans all over the country. And hopefully they can find our stuff and just keep on seeking out new cool brands that aren't Never Say Die. There's tons of great stuff getting produced out there. And it's really cool that you're helping open people's eyes to it.
Yeah. Well, appreciate it. We'll catch everybody next time. Cheers.